I'm Dana Han-Klein here with Shana Feste and Peter Fonda for Boundaries.
If you were a breed of dog, what breed would you be?
Labrador. Oh, wow. They call them yellow, but the kind I'd be like really red.
I'd just be like a scruffy mutt, like my little Loretta, like just a little scruff ball.
Why was now the time to tell this story?
Well, for me personally, it was incredibly cathartic. You know, it's a story that's very personal, and it's about my relationship with my father, and now felt like the perfect time to, I think, you know, you make movies, and I don't know if you felt like this when you were directing movies, like, this was, I think, the first movie that I directed as my adult self. And I think the first movie that I did, which was called The Greatest, I was directing from, like, my 12-year-old self. And then I think I finally matured enough to say, okay, this is my voice as a filmmaker, and these feelings that I felt are real, and they're worth exploring, and I don't know, I felt like this was one of the most adult film I've directed.
Was there a particular catalyst between working on the other films you worked on to this one that you were like, okay, this is why I now feel, or is it just sort of, I built up enough of a body of work and I've explored enough other ideas that...
Well, I think it came in reaction to, you know, the last film I did was a studio film, you know, and that, as much as I loved, that studio film paid for my house, paid for IVF. It afforded me a lot of really wonderful things in my life, but it didn't totally feel like me. And I, you know, was rewritten in the process. And one thing that I really love working with actors. That's my favorite part of making movies. And in that film, a lot of actors were cast for me. And with this film, it was the first time I got to cast my first choice in every single role. And thank God I said yes. Yeah.
Well, it was a great script.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, what made you say yes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like doing comedy, but I rarely get comedy film offered to me. But this was fun. I knew Christopher since I was 18, Christopher Plummer. And it was just a very cool role to play with one of the greatest Shakespearean actors in the Americas, on stage and on film. And when I read it, I thought, this is so far out. Because there is the greatest Shakespearean actor in the Americas dealing pot to Easy Rider. this was like...
Is that the new tagline for the film?
This is like,
sold.
This is going to be so much fun to do this scene, right? And when we were doing it, and you know, we were just having a blast, because we knew each other, we were able to use that. And that bond was just, you could feel, I could feel it. And so we'd finish a scene and cut, and everybody behind the camera started laughing. I thought, all right.
Yeah.
It was fun.
What is your most memorable road trip?
I used to take road trips with my dad all the time. We would drive from LA to Texas every single summer. And I think when I was maybe in my early 20s, I was driving his van, and we were on this road trip, and he went to the bathroom in a gas station. And I was looking for something, maybe a pen. I opened his glove box. We were driving through Texas at the time, and there's huge Ziploc bags full of marijuana. And I was like, what? I was at UCLA at the time. Like, I was like, he came back, and I was like, Dad, we have this. We're in Texas. Like, this is not a joke. And he's like, oh, it's mine. I'm going to just tell him it's mine. I was like, that is not how the law works. They don't just buy it, it's just yours. They'll take me with you. But they didn't. I think his religion was luck. You know, he was just like, he always had luck on his side. He always was like, nothing's going to happen. Don't worry about it, Bean. He called me Bean. That was my Bean. I was just always long and skinny. What was your most memorable road trip?
Oh my God, we don't have enough time. But it was Warren Oates and myself traveling around Europe, promoting The Hired Hand, a Western that I had shot. And this was 1971. And the wild ride, we started in Stockholm and then to Denmark and Hamburg, and then we went from Hamburg to Stuttgart. And there's no film stuff that was happening in Stuttgart. They build cars. That's what their trip is. And they build fast cars so they can drive down to Munich and see a film. I picked up this car, and it was Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at 130 miles an hour on the autoroutes, Autobahn, Autostrada. And I fortunately knew how to drive. But it was hysterical, it was revealing, and I'll never get to do it again.
And how much weed did you have in your glove compartment? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, my God, we had
because the German police.
Hash, and all the way after we picked up the car, everybody said, "Don't go into France carrying. Don't do this." And so as we leave Brussels on our way to Paris, and Oates has been talking about Paris the whole time. I said, "Okay, Warren, we got to get ready to ditch this. Give me a 5-click warning for the border. 5 kilometer, and we're going to hit the border." He said, "Why? What are you going to do, flyer?" PF canvas flyers. And I said, "No, we're not going to. I mean, this is the warning we've been told." And he said, "Well, we just can't give it." I said, "Maybe we'll find a hippie." And so forth. So he said, "I'm going to smoke as much as I can." So he's got a mixture of grass and hash. And the whole inside of the car is filling up with smoke. And I had to pull over and do something. And so I got out, and I was in the front of the car with the hood up. Then I put the hood down. I looked in the car, and it was just nothing but smoke. And then the passenger door opened up, and Oates came spilling out, and I couldn't stop laughing. Yeah. And a little while later, we went through this village, a small village with a big square, and all these truck drivers and one cop. And I said to Oates, I don't understand Europe. The truck drivers are always striking everywhere. It's unreal. And transportation, it's really far out. And we come up, and we're kind of slowing down, looking at it, and the cops said, keep going. So we went through, and I'm still driving as fast as I can, but it's not on the auto route. And I began to see less and less Belgian plates and more French plates, and I realized we passed the border. Yeah. It was where that one cop was. So we went into Paris really handling a lot of stuff. We were set for the rest of the trip.
Are you both good with boundaries and setting them?
I mean, clearly I am not, because there's a lot of truth in this movie. So I think I'm horrible at saying no to anybody. It's very difficult for me to say no. I always want to say yes. And I think even raising children, I'm working on saying no, because I'm just so horrible at it. I'm such a pushover. This film actually just brings out like everything that I'm like, oh God, just want to shrink about. But I think loving boundaries is my goal. Loving boundaries is what I want to try and set. But clearly, yes, I'm horrible at setting boundaries, as you saw in the movie.
Well, I thought that was one of the great parts of the movie.
Okay, good.
I have a very difficult time with boundaries myself, though I know they exist.
Yeah.
And I hope that I can feel other people's boundaries, so I don't.
Yeah.
There's no incursion.
Yeah.
By me without acceptance or invitation. It's just, I don't know. Boundaries are necessary, and at the same time, wow, what are we cutting out?
Yeah.
What are we keeping out?
Yeah.
What are we not letting in?
Yeah.
So I'm as conflicted, I think, as Shana is, and I have a hard time saying no, except when I'm directing film.
Then it comes out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, can't do that. We're going to shoot over here.
Yeah.
What inspires you?
I think I'm constantly inspired by love. I really wanted to make a film that, I wanted to make a film that made people laugh and that made people think about their own families and leave the theater with a smile on their face. I think humanity really inspires me, and I wanted to make a really human film. I grew up loving Hal Ashby's my favorite filmmaker, hands down, and that's what he's always such a beacon of hope in filmmaking, because he just studies the human condition like no others. And when I watch Hal Ashby films, I feel like I would have loved to have known him. I just would have loved to have known him.
He was great.
Was he great? Yeah.
Maybe I'm inspired by the 8-year-old inside of me. A 9-year-old wants to be 10, 2 digits. Mm-hmm. A 10-year-old wants 13. Mm-hmm. An 8-year-old has no idea about any of that stuff and is right in that moment. Mm-hmm. And I like that. So the 8-year-old gets out to do this work, which is goofy and wonderful or serious, whatever it has to be, and the 78-year-old cashes the check.
So on the flip side, what frustrates you?
Yes, I think as a filmmaker, you just want to make films, right? And you have to take such a long time. It's so difficult to get a film made that you can't really do you can't do your job for so long. So you have months or years in between films where you're not doing what you love, and that's, I think, incredibly frustrating.
So my very last question is, growing up, who was your favorite fictional hero or heroine in the sense of, like, not a superhero, but just like a protagonist?
I know mine right off the bat was Pippi Longstocking.
I can answer a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She seems to have been a very inspiring character.
She was such a badass. She was really strong, and she saved her father all the time. You know, she just her father constantly needed rescuing. And Pippi Longstocking, this 10-year-old little girl, would go off and have these amazing adventures and rescue her father. And I just thought that was so cool.
Stuart Little was an inspiration to me. Because I felt like a mouse in a family of humans. And I thought if Stuart Little could do it, I can.
That's cool.
I love that.
So that was an inspiration for me, that and Paddle to the Sea.
Well, thank you both so much. Congrats on the film.
Yeah, thank you very much.